Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of College Hockey Talk. On today's podcast, I'm joined by first-year player from the Yale women's hockey team, Emma Harvey. Welcome to the podcast, Emma, and how's everything going?
Hi, thank you for having me. It's been a great season so far, and I'm excited to be on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And yeah, like you said, your season's been doing well. It's hard to believe that you finished the first half of your season already. So I guess my question is, how would you evaluate your team's performance as of now, and just talk about what you've taken away from the games you've played so far?
Yeah, it's been an amazing experience for sure. Definitely being a first year player on an incredible team like Yale has been an honor so far. It's definitely been a learning experience. It's come with its challenges being a first year on a team of really talented seniors and juniors and sophomores and other freshmen as well. And there's new challenges every day that come along with it, but just kind of going off of learning experiences, giving everything you have to every practice, game, lift, definitely makes you a contender in the dressing room and a contender against other teams for sure.
And how is your team approaching the second half of the season? Like, what are your team's goals and expectations for the rest of the season?
I think that as a team, we're trying to keep our team bond nice and close just because that's been part of our success so far is that we've been a really close team doing a lot of things together, even away from the rink, and just kind of taking it one game at a time as well. We have a few games coming up, and I think that just with our practices right now, we're trying to really rally around each other just because we're coming back off of the break and rally around each other and really get set for those games. So I think that going into the next part of the season, we're really focusing on respecting every single team we play and playing them to the best of our ability and, never really shying away from the game that we play as a team and just being determined and going into every game with a clean slate for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, looking at your schedule for the second half of the season, you have some big games coming up, especially big conference games. So just talk about what it's like playing in the ECAC and just talk about the teams you've played so far and how are you using the games you've played so far heading into the second half for the teams you're going to play, especially since you have some big games coming up, like I mentioned.
Yeah, definitely playing in the ECAC. It's a really big jump from playing junior in London. And every single game is a competitive one. Every single player on every single team is and just super skilled. Um, and going into these big games within our conference, I think that we've just been preparing for them in practices and, really striving to play our game and never take a game off for sure. And I just think that it's a great conference to play in just because everyone wants to win and everyone wants to be there to win and everyone wants to be the best. So even player to player, team to team, everyone wants to be the best. So, really going into these conference games, I think that focusing on our game is really important.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people make the argument that the WCHA is the best conference in women's college hockey, but you can make the argument that the ECAC as well, because if I'm not mistaken, I think 5 teams from your conference are currently ranked right now. So it just shows you how good the conference is, and just every night, there's no nights off really, even against teams that you might think might not have the record, they still have the players and the capability to be a good team in any conference.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely it's incredible that every single team in our conference is completely competitive in being ranked or even being at the top of our conference. And I think that just goes along with respecting every single team and really striving to play your game and not really matching yourself up um, in comparison to other teams and just focusing on yourself.
Now, I have to ask, there's a lot of players, I guess, from Canada that play in the ECAC. So as a Canadian yourself, is it kind of cool getting the chance to play against some players that you might have played against in the PWHL, or is it or cool to play with some of those players you played against as well? Just talk about that.
Yeah, it's definitely it's fun for sure. Coming away from the PWHL and going into the ECAC and still seeing some of the same players, it's fun to compete against them and it's fun to be with them. There's definitely some girls on my team that I had pretty deep rivalries with when I played in the PWHL, and it's kind of fun to be on the other side of that rivalry and be great teammates and play with them because they're extremely talented players for sure. It's fun to have friends on the other teams but also know that those friendships, they like when you're in a game, it's kind of different, right?
Hmm.
Um, but it's really fun to see players after the game that you haven't seen in a while for sure, and play against those same players that you've seen come through the ranks and have played against them ever since you were like 10. So it's definitely fun for sure.
Now you've played in some cool arenas so far. What's been the, I guess, coolest road arena you've played in so far? Obviously, the Whale is probably the best arena you get to play in, but is there any other ones that you've played in that have been cool? And is there any arena I guess you're looking forward to go play in?
I enjoyed playing in the Cornell Arena. It felt like kind of like a it's just the way that the fans filled up the rink that was really fun. And the same with Colgate. Obviously, it's a beautiful arena as well, and they have a great group of fans that come out to their games and support them. And it's fun. It's super fun to be on the road and super fun to be a part of that for sure.
Yeah, I think Cornell is don't they, isn't their arena like almost like 50 years old, or it's a pretty old rink if I'm not mistaken.
It's an old rink. It's definitely got character, but
Mhm.
they pack it for a lot of their women's games and obviously their men's games as well.
Mhm.
So it's a pretty electric arena, but it's fun to play in for sure.
And is it true that they play their band plays during the warm ups? There's no like warm up music. It's just like the band's playing. That's what I was told, and I thought that was a bit odd when I heard that for the first time.
Yeah, it's definitely a different vibe for sure, but it's an interesting one. It's unique to their team for sure, and yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm assuming Harvard's probably the game or arena you're looking forward to playing the most for the second half. I've never been there before, but it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, any game against Harvard, whether it be
Mhm.
here or there, is obviously going to be a great game to watch and to be a part of. Just because both of us as teams want to beat each other for sure. There's that rivalry there that goes pretty deep within Yale and Harvard's histories, and we had them in our barn, and it's going to be interesting to go back to their barn and see how that goes for sure.
Yeah, and obviously the Yale and Harvard rivalry. What's it like being a part of it? Because, like you said, it's obviously a deep rivalry in women's hockey, but not just in women's hockey. Just like the schools in general, they've been rivals since like the early 1900s. So, what's it like being a part of that?
Yeah, coming into it, I think that I didn't realize how deep that rivalry is and how much every single team and even just people attending the university, they want to see every team beat Harvard.
Hmm.
And I don't think I really registered what that was going to be like and to be a part of before I came to the school. But playing in that Harvard Yale game in our first semester and having all the fans there that were pretty fired up to be in that arena, it's definitely a big deal around here. And it shows even with our football teams, our basketball teams, and everyone wants to see a great game between the two teams for sure.
Now, speaking of yourself, what's been the biggest improvement that you've made to your game since you've started playing college hockey this year?
I think that coming away from playing junior, I've been trying to focus a bit more on playing a little bit more of a positional game in college hockey, just because I don't think that as a junior player I realized the importance of how impactful it is to your team to be right where you need to be at all times for sure. So definitely working on evaluating the ice and really seeing where I'm supposed to be at all times and also matching the speed of the game too. It's obviously pretty fast out there. So, keeping up my speed and really working to match the speed of my opponents has been kind of my biggest focuses of the year.
Yeah, and has that been kind of also the biggest adjustment you've had to make to college hockey, just the speed of the game, or is it also the mental side of the game since you're making quicker decisions with the puck and you have to also learn how to be a better overall player and not just defensively but offensively as well?
Yeah, definitely the speed has been probably the biggest adjustment. You don't have the time and space that you had in junior for sure. And also, there's players out there that are a lot bigger than players that I used to play against in junior. So, quick decisions, having your head up and matching the speed have been kind of the biggest parts of it. And also kind of trying to be a consistent player at all times, just because you do have 30 other girls in the locker room you're competing against and the other team that you're competing against as well. So consistency, speed, decision making have been kind of my biggest aspects for sure.
And what talk about that competition? Obviously, playing against other teams, but against your own teammates, like you, how does that kind of relationship work? Because you're battling for practice for roster spots, but you also need to be work together as well, just because that's how you guys can get wins. Is just if you don't have that togetherness, don't have that good culture, then I think it's hard to win championships. That's just from my opinion and perspective, just watching other teams play. But you also have to compete with those same players as well for roster spots. So I'm kind of curious to ask you, what's that balance like?
Yeah, I think as a player going into every single practice, you have to, there's an acceptance there that other players are going to want to be pushing you around on the ice, even your own teammates, and you've got to battle back and battle hard because coaches are always watching, and there's always that battle there for spots for games for sure. But I think that as a team, we've worked really hard to create a culture where we're going to work really hard on the ice and work really hard at our lifts, but we can step away and we can still be a really bonded team, and really surrounding ourselves with each other and surrounding ourselves with the positivity that our team brings has been really important.
Yeah, just talk about building that culture because obviously there's a lot of new faces on the team this year just because of the pandemic last year. Yale didn't get to have a season. So, how have you guys tried to build that culture for this season and trying to have that chemistry as well on the ice?
Yeah, it's definitely different to come into a team just because I haven't been on a new team in 3 years. So coming into a new team, it's interesting to hear new perspectives and hear new ideas of how to create that positive culture and that winning culture as a team and as even just a freshman class. Um, it's been really important to us for sure to meet up as teams and as a team to make sure that everyone's voices are being heard in the dressing room and away from the arena, just to make sure everyone is feeling included and we're all on the same page that we all want to win and we all want to see the best outcome for our team for sure.
And talk about your freshman class. You're obviously a big class, but have you guys got to know each other, I guess, throughout this first year for you? I guess that's not because it's just, I feel like it's kind of weird because usually when your freshman class comes in, it's like probably 5 or 6 players, but for your team, it's like 14 players, I'm pretty sure. So, how have you guys gotten to know each other throughout this time period?
Yeah, it's definitely a large class for sure. And I think that within our freshman class, it's interesting to have us all be so close knit because we're all different ages, we're all from around the world, and um, we just kind of find a way to make it work. And we get along really well as a freshman class for sure. And I think that as a class as a whole, we really work on elevating each other and making adjustments to ourselves and our games to really elevate each other for sure. And I think that coming into college, we're all a little nervous and we're all a little nervous for the college hockey aspect and, checking in on each other because the adjustment can be hard for anyone, definitely. So we kind of work hard to have classes together, surround ourselves with each other when we're studying, and definitely during the last finals period, making sure that we're all, getting some studying done and working hard together. So it's been nice to have a really nice close knit freshman class.
And how have you guys gotten to know the upperclassmen as well? Because they've been on the team for 3 to 4 years now, and it must be weird for them to have pretty much half the team be new faces for them. And how have they helped your transition as well to college hockey?
Yeah, we have an extremely supportive group of upperclassmen on our team, and they've really, really worked hard to make sure that we've been well adjusted. Just because there are so many of us, and we do make up a big chunk of the team now. So they've been really, really great to us, and really make sure that we're included. Make sure that we're feeling comfortable in the arena with our classes. Um, they're more than happy to sit down with us and help us with work or help us pick up classes or even just talk to us about the game. So it's been really, really nice to have a great supportive group of upperclassmen for sure.
And I also want to ask you this because one thing I found interesting about your team, just doing some research, is how you guys are pretty much from around the world. There's obviously players from America and Canada, but there's also players from Germany, Russia, Slovenia. What's that like getting to play with players from other countries, and how have you learned some of the other countries, I guess, culture and stuff? Because I think that's pretty cool.
It's super cool. It's definitely a lot of fun. And you get to kind of like see different cultures brought to the arena too. And that's so important. And that goes along with the inclusivity and everyone, having a voice. And it's definitely super, super cool to have so many players from around the world. And going along with that, we had a few players that got to go to be with their countries for the Olympics, and having players that are Olympians on your team, like that's an honor in itself, and it's really, really cool and it's so fun.
Have you gotten the chance to learn some different languages? Because that would be cool to speak, obviously English, but also Russian as well, if you can learn that.
Yeah, we do have one Russian player on our team, and she's definitely on the phone with her parents sometimes speaking Russian, so you get to hear her on the rink a little bit. I don't know if I've learned any Russian or German yet. I'm currently taking Indonesian at
Oh,
Yale, though,
wow.
so that's definitely a change, but it's a super cool language. So not quite learning Russian yet, but maybe soon.
Mhm. Well, I'm taking Spanish next semester, so maybe I can learn a different language and tell you about it. So
Yeah,
that could happen as well. But no, Indonesia is really cool. I took a class about their music culture last
yeah.
semester, and I thought it was interesting, kind of the I guess gamelan music thing. That's what they do. That's what they call their kind of instruments that they use. So I thought that was really cool and interesting to learn about.
Yeah, it's a super cool language and it's lots of fun because there are lots of girls on the team that are in the class as well. And we definitely work together and it's a fun class to be in.
Now, transitioning back to the hockey side of things, so your team is currently ranked, and I just want to ask you, how has your team kind of maintained that consistency of winning games, but also how does your team handle the pressure of being ranked, especially since Yale hasn't been ranked in a little bit?
Yeah, it's actually our program's first time ever being ranked top 10 ever. And it's exciting, but like you said, it goes along with kind of the pressures that um, the pressures to win and like maintain that win. But I think that as a team, going into every single game, we don't let our ranking define us as a team, and we don't let the teams that are ranked higher or lower have their rankings define them because it goes along with respecting your opponent
Hmm.
and going into every single game with a clean slate and really having to kind of put that ranking aside for the time being, just because it's a whole new game and you never know what's going to happen. But I think that as a team, maintaining that ranking and the mentality that we had to get that ranking in the first place has just been to work hard in practices and really put our our team culture first before even any thought of winning for sure.
Now, let's kind of talk about some of the big moments in the first half of the season for you. One of the biggest moments that happened was your team got a big win on the road against Colgate. Talk about that win and what it meant for your team to beat a team like Colgate, just because, obviously they won the ECAC last year, but I think they definitely have the capabilities of winning a national championship this year as well.
Yeah, I think that was our first long road trip as a team. And my first long road trip as a college hockey player. So we had Cornell the day before, and it was some of our players' first time ever beating Cornell in their college careers. So that was pretty special, and it was really a team effort for that Cornell game. So I think that our spirits were pretty high up for the Colgate game the next day. And we were pretty excited and pretty fired up to be in that arena. I remember we were doing warm up and we were all pretty excited. And I think that it just goes along with the winning mentality and being hungry for the win. And it definitely wasn't a perfect game for us. We had some bumps in the road. We had a player that got injured, and we just had line adjustments going and different people going out all the time. I was playing wing at the start of the game, and I ended up playing on the right side and center and kind of all around. So there's definitely bumps in the road, but I think that it just goes along with kind of gelling together as a team and really fighting for that win, just because Colgate is such a talented team for sure.
And I cover a Hockey East team, and one thing I find interesting about the ECAC, just covering the Hockey East team, is the way Hockey East does it. Obviously, is they play the same team every week for each weekend series. But in the ECAC, you play a team on Friday, and then you play another team on Saturday. How does that preparation work? And do you find that kind of odd playing a different team every night, or do you like that? And do you think there's an advantage to that?
I enjoy playing a different team every night. I think that it kind of goes along with the aspect of having to really see every team differently and having to go into every single game with a different mentality. um and I think that it just goes along with the competitiveness of the ECAC and how one night you could completely blow a team out and the next night it could just fall apart.
Hmm.
So I think that aspect is it I think that it helps our team because it really reminds us of how each night can be different in the ACC.
Yeah, and I was talking to one of your teammates, Rebecca Vanstone, just about like that whole like dynamic of playing a different team every night. And I told her like one of the things I feel like would be kind of disappointing is one thing that gets to happen when you play the same team every weekend is rivalries get to get built up. But she was telling me like hockey players have a long memory, so if something happened in the game, usually those rivalries will come about for the next time you play that team. Is that something you've noticed as well?
Most definitely. I think that coming off of our first semester games, even there are some games and different plays within games that we remember as players. And I think that we're excited to see those teams again. And you know, try and see what happens and
Mhm.
have an opportunity to go at them again.
Now, one kind of low point, I guess, in the first half of the season was your team lost to Quinnipiac in the Nutmeg semifinals. Talk about what you learned in that game, being on the other end of losing against a ranked team, and how are you going to use that game, I guess, heading into the second half of the season, just because Quinnipiac's obviously a ranked team, and they're definitely going to be a team that you'll probably see in the ECAC playoffs if you have a deep run.
Yeah, that game was definitely disappointing for us. It was a heartbreaker. Just because I think, well, we were up in that game, and I think that we got a little bit we got a little bit too comfortable. And I don't think you can ever get comfortable with a team like Quinnipiac. And kind of being on that side of the loss, it was definitely a learning experience, because I think it was one of our biggest losses so far this year. And as a team, it really took us rallying around each other to, kind of accept what had happened and, reflect on it. And in some aspects, you take pieces of those games with you to the next one, and other aspects you have to leave behind, because there's no getting that game back really. But I think that we're excited to see Quinnipiac again, and we're excited to have another shot at them.
Now, I want to transition and talk about your off season and kind of preparing for this upcoming year with Yale. So, talk about your off season. Did you do anything interesting, whether it was hockey related, non hockey related? What was that whole experience like for you?
Yeah, I think that for myself, I really focus on the off ice aspect of things. Just because where I am from, it's difficult to even find ice to skate on during a time like the pandemic. And when you do, you can only have maybe one person out there or two people out there. So it does get a little expensive too. So I really focus on off ice training, and it was really important to me to be sufficient in the gym and be strong in the gym, just because I hadn't really played a real game in a year and a half going into my first college game. Just because I never really thought that my final game against Kingston in the playoffs, how many years ago now, would have been my last junior game. So it's definitely interesting to think about kind of the motivation aspect that was needed to really power through a time like the pandemic and really have to focus on yourself and focus on your game, even if you're away from the arena for so long.
Yeah, just talk about like how did you try to, I guess, go against some of the challenges you faced? Obviously, not having a lot of ice time. How did you like kind of like want to prepare like when you got back in the ice that there wouldn't be like any rust that you would face once you played with practice with the first time with Yale? Because I feel like that's something you have to think of in the back of your head as well.
Yeah, kind of in preparation, I tried to really just do a lot of video review. I ended up watching my games from the national championships with Team Ontario. Um, and when I did get the opportunity to be on the ice, I really worked on, quick decisions, just because I knew that the college game was going to be um, extremely fast, quick decisions, quick hands, and just kind of took every opportunity I could get to get on the ice for sure.
Did things kind of open back up as the summer months went along? Because I feel like here in America, that's kind of what happened, but I don't know if that was the case in Canada or not.
Yeah, it was definitely a battle last year. We What would happen is we would go into lockdown for a few weeks, and then we'd come out, and everyone would be really excited to be out of lockdown. So we'd end up going back into lockdown again, and it was just kind of like it was a month by month basis. But the summer months, things were a bit more open. But still, with hockey stuff and even gym stuff, there were a lot of restrictions there with how many people you could have in those areas. Um, just because I would end up having to just go on the ice with myself and my coach. Couldn't even do a lot of small group stuff. And being in the gym, it would be restricted too with the numbers. You'd have to book ahead. And yeah, it was definitely interesting, but had to find a way to make it work.
That seems like incredibly frustrating, like you're trying to get back in the swing of things and things can get shut down. And I don't know, that must be another challenge you must have, how'd you handle that? And how frustrating was that for yourself? Because I feel like I would be incredibly frustrated by that.
I think that mentally it was really difficult to stay motivated and really have your eye on the prize and know that things were coming, but just right now you had to kind of stick through what was going on. Yeah, it was definitely challenging to try and get through it, but having kind of close teammates in London too, we kind of would, you know, text and over and have like calls with each other, trying to get each other motivated. Even when our team was still together in London, we would have Zoom calls, making sure that everyone was, you know, doing their best to stay motivated. And, you know, there are days that you kind of had to take some time off just because it felt like it was a never ending cycle.
Mhm. And it feels like we're still dealing with that today, which is just, I don't know, for me, it's just like very frustrating because like you would think after 2 years of this pretty much happening, you would think it would almost be over by now. But I don't know, it just seems it's frustrating to me right now. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, with kind of another wave of COVID coming over us, it's a little bit it's scary because I think that as a team we don't want to see this season disappear. Just because I think that we've really worked hard and, you know, put in the time and effort to get where we are, and I think that seeing that there is a certain side of you know, certain side of the NCAA that could not happen this season is kind of scary.
Hmm.
But I mean, I think we're happy to be on campus right now and happy to be practicing. And I think that we're taking it day by day and, you know, really putting in the work to make sure that we're, you know, staying socially distanced at the arena even too, and masked up in the hotel that we're in right now. And, you know, really within our bubble and trying not to surround ourselves with anyone else just because we don't want to see anything happen to our season or our team.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the only way you can handle is just taking it day by day, just controlling what you can control. Just because this situation that we're in now, it's you can't control anything really from it. So that's the only thing I feel like you can do, which is what I'm trying to do as well.
Yeah.
Now, how have you? I guess another thing that you've had to, I guess, adjust to is getting back to school. How have you adjusted hockey and academics, especially since the Ivy League workload's a lot heavier than other schools?
Yeah, I knew coming in that it was going to be a lot of work. I don't think that I was completely prepared in my mind for how much work it was really going to be. Uh, just because coming away from high school, um, it was a really different schedule even last year with classes and class times and online school and in class times. So the workload was just completely different. I think that, you know, balancing out hockey and school is obviously really important, and just knowing when to study and knowing that you need to spend a lot of your spare time studying is really important. For me myself, I use my time at the rink, especially just to, you know, maybe sit in the lounge and get some work done before practice, or even after practice too, or in between lift and practice to do a little bit of work or studying. um, yeah, it was definitely interesting going into our like my first finals period as a college student too. Definitely needed to do a little bit more planning there and think ahead, but it's a learning experience, and I'll know for next time that, you know, deadlines deadlines come at you, and even if you're not expecting it, it's you got to get the work done. um yeah, I think that kind of like the most important thing I'll take away from it is like having a space that, you know, you can get work done in, and having the space and time set out just for you, and having no distractions, and kind of trying to balance that off, just because, you know, we do spend a lot of time at the arena, and it can be several hours a day that you're focusing on hockey, and you got to spend the other hours just working on school and, you know, prioritizing school and hockey over anything else.
Hey, well, you made it through your first semester though, so even though those deadlines came fast, it's kind of at least done for now, and then you have to get back to swing of things in a few weeks. But you know, at least it's kind of at least you can get a little bit of a break now.
Yes, it's been very nice to not have to do any work for the time being. Just because that final week of school was definitely a grind. There was a lot of things to do, and I didn't really plan out my travel schedule quite as well as I needed to, in accordance with my deadlines. But right now, it's been nice to just focus on hockey and just focus on, you know, putting everything I got into the games ahead.
Now, how did you handle not having a season last year? Like, what'd you do during that time period of when your team normally plays? Like, what'd you do? Was it just like pretty much not just playing hockey, just doing school, or was it doing what you do in the off season during that time period?
Yeah, it was really, really strange. Just because it was kind of the first full year that I'd had with no games, in several years of my life. Even it was definitely super weird. And I found it. I think I found it more challenging just because it was my senior year of high school as well as my final year of junior. Because I'd kind of felt in my game that I was at kind of the peak of my game at that point, and I felt like I could have really dominated and really gave it everything I had, within that season if we had one. Um, but with our team, we still tried to be together as much as possible. We had a really young team for my final year. We ended up doing a lot of kind of scrimmages, tournaments within our team, and mixing with the mid AA team in London, and playing kind of 3-on-3 and 5-on-5 with them. Um, yeah, there was definitely a lot more of a focus on just myself though, and my training, just because it was difficult to follow the consistency of the team, just because we were in lockdown or we were not in lockdown, or where there was restrictions. We could only have 5 people in the gym or 5 people on the ice, and it was a little frustrating for sure. But I was happy to have had the opportunity to be a part of a team for my final year, and just have something. Yeah, it was definitely challenging to
Hmm.
maintain the motivation within that team aspect. But as an older player on the team and as a veteran, just kind of had to, keep the younger players motivated and bring them along. Just because it was definitely different for them too. It was their first junior year, and it wasn't going to be exactly what they'd imagined it to be. So yeah.
And did you get to have some, I guess, fun activities for your senior year, or was everything canceled? Like, did you get to have prom and all that stuff, or no?
We didn't have an official prom, unfortunately. We had kind of a fake prom, just in one of our classmates' backyard. There's about 30 of us or so, just because of the code restrictions, unfortunately. We got to go on a prom trip, just because it was during the summer months, and there was a period there where we were allowed to go. We had kind of an unofficial graduation. It was outside.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely was unfortunate to miss out on a lot of the stuff that comes along with being a senior in high school. Um, and it was challenging to stay motivated in that aspect too, just because a lot of my classes it only had 5 or 10 people in it because of COVID, and none of them would be my friends, and my friends would be in other classes, and we'd be doing online school. So it was unfortunate in that sense of things, but I was fortunate to have some things from high school that were kind of the traditional activities, and like prom and grad. So yeah.
Yeah, I felt bad for the class of 2021 because I'm a class of 2020 graduate, and at least for the first half of the year, we had kind of a normal high school kind of experience, and then everything just got shut down. But you guys, you had pretty much the whole year. It was not normal at all, and then you guys didn't have the chance to do any of the, I guess, the normal senior activities like my class didn't get to have. But for my class, at least people kind of recognized and understood it. I feel like people kind of forgot about the class of 2021 that they didn't get to have that too. So I definitely feel bad for you guys, but I feel like we have that relationship and connection because of the pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. It was challenging to be kind of in the school but not really feel like you're a part of the school, just because there wasn't really anything to do other than just go to class. I
Yeah.
definitely missed playing all the other sports that aren't hockey, just because I did play a few other sports in high school, and definitely missed playing them, and I'm still missing playing them for sure. And I would have loved to have that opportunity to play for my senior year, but I understand the restrictions for sure, and fortunate enough to be here now and playing hockey. And
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's also weird because, like, for me, like, I'm used to, at least for my high school experience, I'm used to kind of just doing classes in person like normally. And then when things got shut down, it was kind of, since you were already pretty much almost graduated, you just had to get some few worksheets done, and then you're pretty much done. However, for yourself, you do 3 years of school in person, then you have to adjust to doing everything pretty much online and differently. And that must have been tough for you just because you're used to doing it one way, and then you have to switch it to do another way your final year there. At least for me, like college, it's such a new experience that everything's an adjustment. So you're kind of like expecting it. But as a senior, that's something that you don't really expect. So that's just another thing as well.
Yeah, definitely. And even with that, within my senior year, things kind of kept changing as well. We'd be in class for a few days, and then we'd be online, and then they decided to bring us back in for how many days, and it was a confusing time, and it was really challenging to stay motivated for those online classes, just because they were over Zoom. Um, yeah, it was you just kind of had to wrap your mind around a whole new way of learning.
Now, is it going to be adjustment? Because one thing that COVID has affected that I can't say is that your team won't play in front of any fans for at least the foreseeable future, for your home games at least. So is that going to be adjustment, not playing in front of any fans? And when do you think that rule will change?
I think it will be a little bit of an adjustment. Maybe not for everyone on the team, but I find that having fans in the stands kind of brings a different energy to the arena, and brings kind of a whole nother kind of, not necessarily motivation, but kind of fires you up a little bit more. Um, yeah, it's going to be an adjustment, but I think that as a team, it just kind of gives us one more kind of aspect on the bench to fulfill, which is kind of the energy, and to really make sure that we're keeping each other up on the bench. Just because you don't have those fans that are cheering you on, you got to be a good teammate, and you got to really make sure that no one's hanging their heads on the bench and keeping everyone motivated for sure. Hoping that soon we'll be allowed to have fans back. It'll be interesting to see what happens when everyone comes back to campus, which is kind of at the end of January. Um, yeah, I'm hoping that soon we'll be able to have fans back, just because it does bring kind of a whole another aspect to the game. And I know that over the past year, even we've kind of amounted a pretty nice group of fans. A lot of my friends come to the games, and they're really excited to come see us play. So hopefully that they'll have the opportunity to do that soon.
Yeah. Is it based on like numbers? Like if cases, I guess, go down, then fans are allowed back, at least for Yale students, I assume.
I'm thinking so, just because we did have a really large increase in cases right before the semester ended,
Hmm.
which kind of resulted in a few exams being canceled and put online even. So I think that it'll really kind of come down to how things go when people come back to campus,
Yeah.
um, and how students behave around campus too. Just hoping that we can keep the numbers down.
Yeah, I think one like positive thing is I think we're in the peak right now for cases with the new variant. This is something I saw on TV. I could be completely wrong. So hopefully, like by a few weeks, maybe numbers go down.
Yeah, hoping so. Just because it is really scary too with the
Hmm.
new variant out there, and just hoping that everyone stays safe and we can keep our team safe and keep our season, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's what everyone hopes right now. I can't do another shutdown. So
I don't
no.
think we could either. We'd miss the rink too much.
Oh yeah, I agree. So now let's kind of transition from COVID since I don't want to talk about that too much. I assume you don't either. Let's talk about the beginning of your hockey career. So you're from London, Ontario. Talk about growing up there. How did you start playing hockey? And it must be cool to say you're from London, even though people think it's from the other side of the country.
That was kind of the first thing that I learned when I got here, is that no one really knew what London, Ontario was. And when I said I was from London, people would ask me where my accent was. I was kind of like, oh, different London.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started skating when I was like 3 or 4. My dad put me on skates. He always built us like a backyard rink. So I kind of started out there, and I started with learn to skate and kind of just open ice. My older brother played, so it's kind of a motivation for me to play as well. And I made it very clear to my parents that I did not want to play hockey. I told them flat out that I didn't want to play. I wanted to figure skate. I wanted to do gymnastics. I wanted to dance. Um, and it kind of took until I moved to girls hockey for me to really fall in love with the game, and to see kind of the appeal of the game and to have fun with it. I think that's what I was missing. So I actually had the opportunity to play in London my entire minor hockey career. I played for the London Devilettes all the way through to junior. So yeah, I started playing for them in my second year of tyke hockey, and I played there all the way through. So that was definitely special for me to, really be a true London Devilette all the way through my hockey career. Kind of playing in the city as itself, though, it's a big hockey city. It really is focused on the London Knights, our OHL team, and a lot of aspects of the city kind of reflect the historical aspect of the team, and the city itself surrounds itself around the team. So it's fun to be in such a hockey city, just because I grew up going to all the OHL games. A lot of my favorite players were on the London Knights, and it's cool to see how they transitioned from the OHL and now are really big NHL stars. One thing I'd like to see from the city, though, I'd love to see kind of the girls junior team become big like the OHL team there, just because I think that there's a whole nother level to how the city could support the women's game in our city as well.
Yeah, what made your parents, I'm just curious, make you stay with hockey throughout boys hockey and then that transition to girls?
I think that I'm honestly not sure. I think that is probably kind of like, well, maybe she'll find a way to like it. Because it was kind of around, I was about 4, so when I was playing with boys, so it was kind of like maybe the 4-year-old in me talking about how much I wanted to do gymnastics. I think it took, I broke my elbow in gymnastics. I think that kind of pushed me away from it and pushed me into
Mhm.
hockey a little bit more, realizing that I wouldn't, hopefully wouldn't break any bones in hockey. So I think I kind of, in my mind, got scared of doing anything else that wasn't hockey. So growing up, I played hockey and soccer all the way through, and had the opportunity in high school to play basketball and badminton, and ran long distance, cross country, and track and field. So definitely kind of my main focus was hockey all the way through, and had quite an interest in soccer as well. But really, my heart was always with hockey. So I think that maybe they could see that from the age of 4. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad your parents made you stick with it because look where you are now. So
Yeah.
so thank you to your parents for that. But who was your favorite player growing up? Was it someone on the London Knights, or I don't know, was it someone on maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs, or was it a female player on the national team? Like, who did you idolize growing up?
I think that in my memory, kind of my first player that I really, really liked to watch and I loved was Adam Perry, Corey Perry's brother, because he played in London. I got to go to all the games. I'd always see him play, and I thought that was pretty cool. He was definitely my first kind of favorite player, and then I kind of transitioned into like the Sedin brothers. I watched them on Vancouver a lot. And then when he played in London, Mitch Marner was definitely one of my top players when I was younger, just because it was cool to watch him play. He was ultra talented and playing in my hometown. But I think that, um, you know, being a female hockey player, I obviously idolized Haley Wickenheiser and Megan Augusta, and really saw them as, idols and people that I wanted to be, most definitely. But I think that reflecting on my game and, looking into the NHL even now, I think that kind of my top players would be like Nathan McKinnon, Steven Stamkos, Tyler Seguin, and obviously Connor McDavid. You can't not like Connor McDavid.
Did you get the chance to see McDavid play? Because I know he played in the OHL. So did you ever get to see him play when he was with Erie, when he visited London? Because that must have been cool, because I remember everyone was talking about McDavid versus Eichel in that draft. And I got the chance to see Jack Eichel play with Boston University. And it was one of the coolest things ever. It just showed you how talented he was. And I'm assuming Canadians probably had that experience with McDavid when he visited their team in the OHL.
Yeah, I did get to see him play once, and it was definitely really, really cool because even at that time, he was obviously ultra talented and obviously was going to be very successful. So definitely super cool to be able to have seen him play, and even seeing him play just on TV now is definitely pretty awesome.
What was your thoughts on the goal he scored against New York? I don't know if you saw that, where he just went by like 5 defenders and then like scored all on his own. It was pretty crazy.
I think it just speaks to, why he is one of the best players in the NHL and will be an incredible player for years to come, because he really has shown no signs of stopping. And I think that as a younger player in college hockey, like watching players like Connor McDavid and kind of learning from him and watching film, it's really important in my game, at least, for sure.
Now, how cool is it, I guess, growing up in a hockey town like London? Because I know Dale Hunter is a big deal up in London. I think he was like the general manager of the team at one point. So I don't know too much about the like Canadian junior hockey. Is it kind of weird being in America where college hockey is kind of the main thing, I guess, for juniors, and then in Canada it's the complete opposite? I guess what's from your perspective, other similarities to college versus juniors?
Yeah, I think that um, kind of reflecting on the differences between the like, watching junior hockey all the time in Canada and then coming here and having junior hockey not be as much of a bigger deal. It's strange to see how big university sports are because they're obviously really big in Canada too, but more people are going to go watch a junior hockey game as opposed to a college hockey game in Canada. Um, so it's definitely different. But it's a lot of fun though because I'm a college hockey player and you get to see lots of different people that come out to different games. Yeah, it's different for sure.
hmm Now, you obviously had the opportunity to play in the PWHL for the London Devilettes. How did you get the opportunity to be a part of that organization? Because talking to other players that play in the PWHL, it kind of just happens naturally. You know, you're from the town and you just play for that team. But I'm curious, like, how do you get involved with the team in the first place? Like, is it kind of like a youth organization you join and then it's like minor hockey, like as you get older, you make it to the junior team? Or is it kind of just like you play for a youth team and then you get like recruited by, I guess, London or Oakville or one of those teams?
Yeah, for London at least, I since I played all the way through, I was playing BAM AA in London, and I had the opportunity to practice with the junior team a little bit and to play a few games with them. And then at the time, I was also practicing with our mid AA team in London, just to get experience with older players. You get to see some different speeds, some quickness. There's harder shots, stuff like that. So I played up with them a little bit when I was younger. And then when it came time for tryouts for the team, I knew that there was very few spots going onto that team just because it was 13 veterans during my first year, which is quite a few. There's limited spots for sure. So it was me and one other player that were the two 15-year-olds that were taken for our first year of junior on that team. And going away from that first year junior, it was definitely an honor to play with some of the most talented players in college hockey that were on that team, and to have the opportunity to win an OWHA championship and a PWHL championship, and to be a part of that culture and kind of learn from those older players, just to kind of bring that leadership aspect to my following years in junior hockey. Just because I was on the team for 3 years, which can be different considering which junior team you go to. Most players end up playing a year of midget and then 2 years of junior in other centers. But in London, I had the opportunity to play 3 years, which I was really, really honored to have, and really thankful to have those 3 years.
And how did your experience with London help prepare you for college hockey?
I think that having, kind of like I said before, having the opportunity to play with such talented OUA players and NCAA players that have shown that they are some of the most talented players. It's definitely an honor in that aspect, but really helped me prepare and kind of realize where my game needed to be successful at the college level and the university level. So yeah, it was challenging at first, but kind of reflecting on the opportunities that we had in London, we had a great training facility, great facilities overall. Having those opportunities have really helped me prepare for the college experience for sure.
Now, I have to ask you this one question because you got to play with Nicole Gosling when you were with London. And watching college hockey now, I'm just going to give her a shout out. She's one of the best defenders in college hockey. She's so much fun to watch. Just such a complete, dynamic player on the ice. Talk about what it was like playing with her and what did you learn from her and what's she like as a teammate, both on and off the ice?
Yeah, it was lots of fun for sure. I played with her for 2 years in junior, and had definitely shown to be an extremely talented player for sure. It was as a first year and being younger than her. It was fun to learn from her and to see the gameplay that she had within her game. Yeah, it was really fun to have her as a captain as well, have that leadership on our team, and also to have her cousin Julia on the team as well. She's extremely talented as well, and to have both of them was an honor, and to play with them was lots of fun.
And you get to play against them now as well, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're definitely great competitors in the ECAC, and motivation to work that much harder.
Now, talk about your recruitment process with Yale. What was that like, and what made you want to go to Yale versus other schools you might have looked at? Because I know the recruiting process for Ivy League schools is a little bit different than other universities.
Yeah, Yale was actually the first school ever that contacted me. I remember I was in the 8th grade, and I had no idea what I wanted to do for high school. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up even. So it was definitely overwhelming when they first contacted me. And in my eyes, I had a pretty long recruitment process, with just on my own path. I saw a lot of schools. I talked to a few schools, and nothing really felt right until I ended up talking to my coaches that I have now from Yale, and they really spoke to me about the winning mentality, and something that was really important to me was development over my 4 years. And kind of even just the aspect of the university, it has incredible academics, some of the top professors in the world, incredible people to learn from. So that was a really big piece for me. I actually never had the opportunity to even see the school though, just because I did commit in 2020. um, yeah, I never had the chance to see the school, but I think that when I was sitting down and thinking about my decision, I really thought about what kind of team I wanted to be on, and how I wanted to go about my college hockey experience as well as my college experience. And I thought, an incredible school, an incredible hockey program, why would I not commit to Yale? And, my coaches really sold me on it. And it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. It's an incredible school to be a part of and an incredible program to be on.
And I think that's a good way kind of to end off your hockey experience and kind of segue to the non-hockey segment of the podcast where I ask you some non-hockey questions just to get to know you a little bit more off the ice. So my first non-hockey question too is, what is the most interesting thing you've seen or read this week?
Um, Let me think. Oh yes, being kind of in our hotel rooms and got to find different things to do. I read it was a New York Times article by Claudia Rankin. It was the meaning of Serena Williams, and it really delved into what kind of athlete she is and what kind of person she is, and what it takes to be such a decorated and successful athlete. And just because she is one of the greatest athletes in the world. And yeah, it was a really interesting article to read, and just because she is, such a person to look up to.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I never really thought about kind of I don't watch too much tennis, so it's kind of crazy to think how good she is and like how I think a lot of people kind of take her greatness for granted if that makes sense. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun to read different stuff and to hear different stuff about different sports and different athletes, just because you can find similarities as well as differences, and
Mhm.
can really kind of like bring those into a different mentality for your game even.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing I saw this week was I'm probably very late on it, but I saw the movie The Social Network, and I thought it was really interesting to hear kind of how the story of how Facebook was founded because I'm really interested in kind of the business side of some stuff. So I just thought that was an interesting movie to watch.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one, but maybe that'll be my activity in the hotel for the next
Yeah,
few days. Go see
it's a
that
good
one.
movie. I had the DVD, so I don't know if it's on like any streaming platforms or not. But if you get the chance to watch it, it's very good, especially if you're into like business and technology like I am. It's something interesting to watch. I don't know how accurate it is, but it's still I thought was pretty interesting just because Facebook kind of started social media if you think about it. So and obviously social media now is a big part of everyone's daily lives. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, what music do you like to listen to?
Okay. So away from the arena, I listen to a lot of kind of country music, a lot of Luke Combs, Kane Brown, Zach Bryan, Chris Stapleton. But if I'm at the arena or if I'm heading to a game, I listen to a lot of EDM. Two Friends, Modi, David Guetta, Loud Luxury, kind of those artists, just because those are the ones that get me the most motivated. and have kind of been my music choices for the past few years for getting ready for games.
What's your favorite David Guetta song? Because I was listening to the song "Where Them Girls At." I don't know if you've heard it, but that song fires me up a little bit.
That's a great choice. I think that mine is probably Better When You're Gone.
Oh, that's a good one too.
That's probably my number one kind of game day song at the moment for sure.
Now, what is your biggest pet peeve?
I ever since coming to college, I don't know what happened, but I became quite kind of the neat freak. No, I don't like anything messy, no messy spaces. Things have to be organized. No food or trash left out. So even in my dorm room, in my common room with my suite mates, like I'm always making sure things are pretty organized in there, just because when things are organized, I feel a little bit more organized and I can feel like it's the space I can study in and a place I can get work done in. So a little bit of a neat freak, but comes with its positives too.
Oh yeah. And luckily, I don't think any of your teammates seem messy at all, right? Or still your roommates?
No, I'm fortunate enough to not have anyone in my life who's super messy.
Mhm.
And if someone's dry stall does get a little messy, you just kind of let them know that, hey, I clean it up a little bit in here and you got to throw a little bit of the garbage out. So yeah.
I guess, who has the messiest locker on the team?
I'm trying to think. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Everyone does a pretty good job of keeping things organized in our actual locker room though. Like things have to be obviously arranged in a certain way. And we keep the locker room pretty clean. So I don't know if anyone is super messy, but we keep it pretty clean in there.
Now, if there was a movie made about your life, who would you want to play yourself?
I think that maybe Margot Robbie. She's pretty great in The Wolf of Wall Street. So I think I'd probably say her.
Yeah, that's a good choice. For me, probably Andrew Garfield. And we don't
Oh
look
yeah.
anything alike, but I feel like he's such a great actor, so that's why I feel like he would play me well. But obviously, DiCaprio would be cool as well. For Wolf of Wall Street, great movie, but just to say that Leo played you in a movie is pretty cool thing to say. So those two would be mine.
Yeah.
Now, I was watching a video that Yale women's hockey made, and one thing I found interesting was you spoke French. So, talk about speaking that language. Do you know any French, or did you just say it for the video? Because I had to ask about it because I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I've taken French since the fourth grade, all through my life, and I kind of found a love for it in high school. So I took it all 4 years of my high school year, and my French teacher, she kind of became one of my closest friends away from the school, just because her kids played hockey. So I ended up being like a trainer for them. So yeah, kind of fell in love with the language. I speak a pretty decent amount of it, and kind of disappointed that I didn't take it here at Yale, but definitely enjoy the language and I speak a decent amount.
Mhm. What are some things you can say in French that you can say on the podcast? Because I think that'd be pretty cool.
um, we can go with something easy. Bonjour, je m'appelle Emma. J'aime le hockey.
Awesome. I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty cool.
Hello, my name's Emma and I love hockey.
Awesome. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. I can only speak English, so not the best, but hopefully I've always actually wanted to learn a different language. I think that's important actually to learn just because you can understand different people. So hopefully one of my goals actually in the next 10 years is to speak fluently in Spanish, just because here in the US, I think Spanish is the most popular language to speak after English. So that would be pretty cool for me to do. So that's something I'm actually like I really think language is cool. So that's one goal I have for the next 10 years. Hopefully I get to accomplish it, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to have girls on the team that language English isn't their first language, and they come to a school where everything is taught in English, and it's interesting to be able to hear the different languages and how challenging it is to to be bilingual or trilingual even.
Yeah, and especially to go to a different country and have none of your basically family here and to play college hockey and do college must be a huge challenge. So I always have a lot of respect for those international students that come out because they're taking a big challenge to come here and do it. And I feel like most international students do a great job at it. So
Yeah, for sure.
now, speaking of your teammates, who is the funniest on the team?
I'd have to say Rebecca Vanstone, for sure, is the funniest person in the dressing room. away from the rink, 100% would have to say Rebecca Vanstone.
Best hair on the team too.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
Now, who is the best trash talker on the women's hockey team?
Best trash talker on the Yale women's hockey team. I'd have to go with hmm. Maybe have to go with Rebecca Vanstone on that one too. She's definitely the funniest, and maybe might be the best trash talker too.
I feel like for some of like the players that don't speak English, like they could just trash talk someone in their own language and no one would know what they're saying. I feel like that must be an advantage. So maybe there's that as well.
Maybe they are. I'd have to ask. I'm not sure because I wouldn't know what
Yeah.
they're saying for sure.
Now, who has the best style on the team besides yourself, obviously?
I'd probably have to say Caitlin Rippon or Rebecca Foja would have the best style, I think.
Now, back to some hockey questions now. First one is what should be done to help grow women's hockey?
I think that, as college hockey players and even as just female hockey players, that there's a certain responsibility there to, be a leader in your community, and even away from your hometown to be a leader in the sport and to really, push for support for that sport as well. But I think that one of the main things is giving back to your community and, keeping girls in the game and keeping them motivated to, really go through the ranks of the game itself, no matter what level you're playing. And definitely just having different platforms for female hockey players to speak about the game and to have people support the game as well. So even having a podcast like this where female hockey players can come on and talk about it is great.
Oh yeah, no, that's partly why I started College Hockey Talk was because I feel like there was platforms for women's hockey and men's hockey, but there's never a platform that combined the two. And I think that's why I like doing this is because I get to hear perspectives from people in the men's and women's game. And I think it's cool to kind of have some audience from, I guess, the men's game also see how good women's hockey players are and just hear their stories as well. So I think that's something that I've tried to do to help. And hopefully I'm doing a good job at it, but I guess time will tell.
Yeah, definitely having the opportunity to hear from both sides of the game, just because they are similar, but there are a lot of differences in the games too. It's great to be able to hear both sides.
Yeah, no. So it's been awesome to hear your story. But next question is, should body checking be allowed in women's hockey?
That's it's definitely a multi-layered question for sure. I think that um, growing up in the game with no body checking, it's still body contact. Um, but like body contact still happens. There are like there's it's definitely still rough. So even if the aspect of body checking isn't in the game, I think that um, as players in the game itself, we're still rough with each other and may not even need body checking in the game.
Yeah, I just think it would make refereeing the game easier because I feel like you get refs that are strict about it and then refs that aren't. And I feel like refereeing should be kind of even across the board. And I think if you added it, you would get that kind of evenness across the board. So like when you play a non-conference game, you wouldn't have to worry about, I guess, like, oh, should I kind of be a little bit more easier in the boards just because I don't know if I'm going to get a call or not. So that's why I think it should be allowed, just because I think it will ultimately make the game safer if the refereeing is even across the board.
Yeah, it's very true. Growing up as like a pretty tall player in the sport or a pretty big player in the sport definitely had its challenges in that aspect where, you know, you'd be going against players who are still growing and being one of the biggest players on the ice kind of had its difficulties when it came to body contact. So I definitely see that side of things too.
What's the biggest check you've ever thrown in college hockey? I feel like playing the amount of games you've played so far, you've got to accidentally probably hit someone by mistake or something like that must have happened.
I don't know if I can think of one specifically, but yeah, I'm not sure. But I think that, kind of adjusting to the college hockey physicality has
Hmm.
been a challenge. Just because even going away from last year where we were just playing with our team, you didn't really want to, go put someone on the boards because it was your teammate.
Yeah.
So it's an adjustment to the physicality of the game, for sure.
Now, last question is what advice would you give a younger player who's listening to this podcast on what it takes to make it to the D1 college hockey level?
I think that within minor hockey and junior hockey alone, there is kind of a certain amount of politics, and I would say to just not get caught up in the politics of it, especially when it comes to recruiting and to scouting and that overall process. People can get caught up in what someone else is doing. So I think that coming from that experience, I would say to focus on your own journey and to focus on your own path to wherever you want to play or whatever path you want to take, because everyone's path is going to be completely different. I would say kind of overall to just, be the hardest worker that you can be in and out of practice and in games, because that's what's ultimately going to, push yourself to the next level and push your teammates to the next level even. Um, and I think that overall, I would say, be as coachable as possible. Always take advice from anyone that's willing to give it to you. Take advice and, put it towards your game and be a good teammate. And kind of my rule was always to, make my teammates look better than me. So I would kind of pass that along.
Well, do you have any shout outs, I guess, before we end this interview to your teammates, family members, friends? I know we mentioned some people throughout the interview, but if there's anyone you forgot to mention or want to shout out again, feel free to do that.
Probably send a shout out to my mom and dad and my brother Will. They're at home in London. I have my incredible teammates, my friends back home, my skills coach in London, Steve Bake, BK Hockey. He's pretty awesome. And probably my mentor, Erin Austin, and her two kids those would be my shout outs.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Emma. I really appreciate your time. It means so much to myself, and I wish you nothing but the best for the rest of the season and for the rest of your semester with Yale. I know you're going to do great. Take care, stay safe, and hopefully at some point in your career, I get the chance to see you play in person.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a great opportunity. Thank you.